What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Rep podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. This time with me, my good friend Austin Brown, who's in the thick of it. He's
Oh yeah.
three and a half weeks out from the Arnold. Before we get into that, I want to encourage you guys to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, leave us a comment, even if it's just something like an emoji for the algorithm. We appreciate it. Share the video with a friend, share it with somebody that's into bodybuilding or training. And lastly, ring the bell so you're notified. I'm doing multiple podcast episodes a week, so you'll be given the heads up when they drop. So quick little personal intro. Austin's 3.5 weeks out, and I made him wait to tell me about this before we got on the recording. So you were saying Friday you had like a huge refeed day, so tell me about it.
Yeah, so that's been pretty much the process, the whole prep, but those feedings have gotten more aggressive the more, insulin sensitive and depleted I've become. So pretty much like I started the prep around like 8.5, 9 weeks out, and like I'll just do like a string of like pretty aggressive low days, like we've discussed, a little bit, and then I'll just have like I take Friday off from training, and I train Saturday, Sunday, push pull. So I'll feed up heavy on that Friday, and then I get like two pretty productive training sessions out of that, and
Yeah,
like the objective typically is like I'll try to it gives me an idea of where conditioning is, because I reach a peak fullness at some point during that, feed up, and then I'll like spill over a little bit, and then I'll tidy that up through the weekend, have good energy, and then rinse and repeat. And that's been working really well. So this Friday I probably had the most I've had, and I had like it was like pushing almost like 12,000 calories. So it was like, I think I can look at the numbers, but just off the top of my head, I think it was like around 300 something fat, and I think it was like 17 to 1800 carb, and
holy shit, dude.
yeah, and then protein lands, somewhere in the threes or something. But
Yeah,
it was yeah, it was crazy. But my stomach felt flat all day. I felt great. Never got swollen. I just kept eating until I felt like even the pressure in my legs wasn't even building. Like it took me, I texted my girlfriend, and I was at like 200 fat, 900 carb or something at that point. Like, and I texted her, and I was like, man, like I'm still flat. I can't even get my head wrapped around this. Like vascularity wasn't back, legs were still dead. So I just kept feeding and feeding. Ended up having like 7 or 8 meals, and then like I'll usually have like 5 pre-planned meals, and then I'll just eat something at night, whatever I want.
yeah,
And like this week I did sushi, and
yeah.
after that, there's like just some desserts and like cheesecake, cookies. But
Nice.
yeah,
Fuad would be proud.
yeah. So, those were the picks you saw this from the weekend. And
So
I
what
was
day of the week were the pictures? Was that
let me,
Saturday?
let me try to find the post that you were maybe referencing. Was it that outdoor?
I think so. Yeah, it looked like it was like natural lighting, and it was a series. It was every shot.
Pretty much every pose, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was the morning after that. I
Oh
don't
wow.
Yeah, I don't eat. So I woke up just a little watery, not bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my GI was inflamed and stuff like that.
Yeah. Of course.
That's a lot of stress on it. It was pretty pissed off for most of the day, which to be expected, but not too bad. Just full. It just had 30 pounds of food, right? So you
Yeah.
go in.
Yeah.
But no, that was a post workout. So like I'll fast when I train Saturday morning, and like that's enough to and I'll push it, and it's enough to dry off the look. So that's pretty much like how I'll peak, is I'll spill, and then I'll just let it dry off.
So I was going to ask you, are you doing it in this
Yeah.
fashion to kind of simulate what you're going to do prior to the show?
Yeah. So this has always worked really well for me. I'll basically feed extremely aggressively 2 days out and spill over purposely, like try to go to bed that night looking pretty shitty.
Yeah.
And then that next day, always variable to change, but 9 times out of 10, it'll be just a very low carb day,
Yeah.
under 100, just
Yeah.
like basically nothing. And then one moderate meal that next morning,
Yeah.
and
To
that's
walk
like
out.
that's the look every time. So, um, but yeah, like these were post workout, and that was only one day after, and I was really pleased with the fullness and tightness there. But then the ones I posted today, if you look at those, there's less pop, but look how just dry and like disgustingly grainy I am. That's 2 days post.
See, I was
So
going to
it's
ask
like
you if you had found like a formula also, like which morning are you waking? Like, because in my head, I'm thinking probably Sunday morning, like yesterday morning, you probably looked wild.
that's what these are.
Oh, that's what
That's the
these
look
are.
is two
Okay.
days. Yeah,
So
two
okay, so
morning
this doorway, yeah, yeah, this natural lit doorway is that
is
morning after, and then
mhm.
so this like it's you got like the double mirror like posing room. This was
Yeah, yeah,
Sunday
yeah.
morning. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So still full, like
yeah,
85 to 90% full, but just dry as
yeah.
fuck.
Your legs
So
look insane.
yeah, I mean, just everything, I'm rock hard. So, and the
Yeah,
glutes were still full enough to press really well against the skin. And like
nice.
that's the look every time. So,
Yeah, I mean that's like a really fun. If you bring that to the stage, like there's no way you're not gonna feel pleased with that. Like that's a really fun look to have. You know what I mean?
yeah, yep. So, and if you're lean enough, even if
Like you're
you,
not limping to the stage looking like that. Like that's like you're bringing it to the stage, you know?
you're going up there ready to party, man.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. No, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear the process because I don't I certainly don't advocate for it, especially being a coach. I know how difficult it is to bring someone in where you're completely objective as a second eye. So it's I give you a lot of respect to see and kind of hear you talk through your process doing it on your own. There's not a lot of people that I know that do it well. Obviously, John Jewett is the name that comes to mind. Um, and I give him a lot of props for being able to do it at such a high level. And then
It's
seeing
crazy.
you do it too, like, man, like this is like a new body for you too, though. Like being that you kind of grew out of classic up into, like the top of heavyweight open bodybuilding. Like this was a real, prior to this year, like this was not a process or a body that you had dialed in. And it's kind of a risk then to kind of take it on by yourself. So it's cool to see it. It's cool to hear you kind of talk through some of the behind the scenes stuff too. Um,
Mhm.
what are you doing to get that much food in on those days where like your stomach does still feel flat? I mean, I know you said that you're kind of pigging out at night, like to kind of cap it off, but like even up to that
Mhm.
point, like is it just a ton of rice, ton of cream of rice? Like what are you doing?
Yeah, so cream of rice and rice, and then I
Yeah.
will add like some like more liquid type
Oh,
things. So
okay.
honey, I'll use banana, I'll use dates,
Okay.
maybe some 100% maple syrup,
Yeah.
something. Like this past week in particular, I bought like a loaf of sourdough bread, and I had like 3 or 4 slices on top of a rice meal with jam on them,
Yeah.
and
Nice.
then
That
I
usually
did
sits pretty well for people.
digest great. It's
Good bread. Yeah.
pretty dense,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then the jam's obviously very dense, and that just sets really easy and stuff. So that's typically what I'll do for those first handful of meals, and then just at night, like I'll my go-to, like what I've been doing a lot is I'll do like 2 foot long sandwiches,
Okay.
pretty loaded up,
Yeah.
and then I'll do a piece of cheesecake and like just some like small those like little store bought cookies and just
Yeah. Yeah.
lay down on those and yeah, that's pretty much what I'll do, and then that usually puts me where I need to be.
It's working, dude. Whatever you're doing, it's working. You're working. Um, Looking ahead, I have a couple of questions for you just because I'm curious about how you plan on doing things because this is a variable that I've thought about even for myself this upcoming year. Like, you hear a lot of times guys are pulling their test or pulling their GH at a certain point, 10 days out, 2 weeks out, a week out, whatever it is. Have you thought about that? A couple of questions. Have you thought about that? What is your experience with that, with those variables in the past? And then what's the plan this time?
Yeah, in the past, I've always brought test down pretty low. Like my
Yeah.
last show, conditioning was very good. On stage, it didn't transfer. The peak got a little thrown off. That was
I also
tough.
have to say I went and pulled your like just to make like a little thumbnail for that question box today. I
Yes,
went to your state. Bro, that is some of the worst lighting that I have ever seen. It looked
it's
like you
like
were posing in a closet.
it's like red, yellow. It's like
It was just dark. It was so dark. Like I
dark.
wasn't thrilled with the lighting at Tampa, like the pictures that I pulled, and I put them
No,
next to yours, and I'm like, man, I have nothing to complain about. Yeah.
they yeah they were absolutely
Which
horrible.
is
I
weird
think they
because
did
that's a
have.
big show.
It's a big show. It got new promotion a couple years ago, and they've been
Mm,
struggling to find a good venue. It is changing this year. I have a lot of respect for the people that promote that show. It's not for lack of trying. I think it's just a
yeah,
logistical issue where they were kind of like it was their best option, which
sure.
it's not a horrible venue, but it's old. The lighting's bad. Like the central
Yeah.
air this year, it was about
Oh
85.
my God. Oh my God, dude. What?
That was dude. I'm like I don't sweat on stage. I do not.
Yeah.
I'm a very
Yeah.
dry type of person, and I was leaking. And I look
Uh,
over left and right, and the guys next to me are leaking 10 times worse. So I'm like, at least everyone else looks like shit. But like, yeah, dude, it was an absolute shit show. Um,
yeah.
but they
But
do have a new
anyway,
anyway.
but anyway,
Yeah. Back to that. So yeah, I'll typically pull tests down pretty low.
yeah.
Last show I did that. Conditioning was incredible. Like I would bring tests down to like under 200, like very
Yeah.
low.
Okay.
But I have noticed I will lose fullness when I do that. So I'm not going to do that
Right.
this time. I'm happy with how I look. I'm like a few pounds away conditioning wise from being bang on nailed. I'm not going to pull drugs right now, or where they're going to be. I did drop the GH.
Oh,
And
you
I know,
dropped it.
yep. So I dropped
Okay.
that. Like, so today's Monday, like last weekend. So like Friday or Saturday of last weekend, noticed a
Okay.
really nice shift in water retention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got a lot harder through the week.
Mm,
Hands got really dry. Everything's looking
yeah.
dry. But man, I will say this on the GH thing, man, it's because I ran it really high from post show like until now, essentially. I definitely noticed like my gut is like more inflamed and feels it's definitely more like my vacuum's not quite as deep and stuff like that. But
Really interesting.
yeah. So I was like, dang, that's crazy. Like it really did, expand like my, intestinal area for sure.
Hmm.
Like abs look a little shittier, but like it's not a huge difference. But it's like to me, I'm very in tune with how I feel. And like I'm like this vacuum feels different now, and like in the mirror it looks different and stuff. But I can
Hmm.
feel, and that's really the only thing I can attribute it to. I think. Um,
Which is so funny because so often, like, especially people that aren't super in tuned with the sport or haven't done it at like a pretty high advanced level, love to talk about growth guts or GH and growth guts. And then here you are saying that it's the opposite.
no, I'm saying it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like
Oh,
it's people will blame high growth and say, "Oh, that's why there's these bubble guts on stage."
well,
And then
that's what I
you're
was
you're saying it's better without it.
right. Yeah, I'm saying
Oh,
like
your
that
midsection looks
does
better.
feel. No, it looks like it's like bigger now.
No, so it's without growth. You're saying your stomach feels bigger.
Well, no. I mean, I've
Uh,
only been without it for like 10 days, but I noticed
yeah.
like I've noticed like throughout my prep, and now that I'm lean, like I can really, get a feel for. I thought it was just like kind of, some.
Oh, so you're attributing this to not it just being out in the short term. Like you're saying, like from long term use, you think that your vacuum feels different, your stomach feels different.
Yeah. I
I
just
got
think
you.
so. I
Hmm.
ran 10 IUs for like a hot minute, and
How
uh,
long?
mm,
Because I've been there for like a year plus at this point. I
yeah.
mean, not so
Well,
much recently, but for the better part of probably 18
I'm not
months, I would
saying
say.
I'm not saying that's 100% what it is. You know, it could be. I
Could
think
be.
your gut grows with time when everything else grows, and the amount of food volume we put in. Like I was eating really heavy post show, you know, yada yada yada. I think that plays a huge role in things too, and I think even age. You see guys midsections transform, you know, throughout their career, right? It's that always happens. So, you know, maybe it's just a factor of time simply, but
I
it's just
got you.
something I picked up on. But yeah,
Did
so
you
like
notice any like short term, like from dropping it? I mean, there's something to be said. You might just be seeing the effects of it now, 10 days or whatever. That's why people give it that type of timeline. But do you feel like your look has suffered in terms of fullness or anything like that, or pop?
no, I really don't, man. I just lost a big layer of water and I can
And you
actually
just look
tell
tighter.
what's going
Yeah.
on. So I think
Interesting.
drugs are hot. So I'm not going to lose pop. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
androgens are
Man, I've thought about this
they're,
because I've always been someone that, like, I just follow the plan, but I've always had coaches that completely pull it out at some point. I'll even for most of the preps that I remember doing, I like completely pulled tests as well. Um, Man, and then when I ran I had like a month where I ran like really high growth hormone, and I know it's a totally different scenario being in the off season than a couple weeks before the show, but just seeing like how visually different I looked,
yeah.
um, to where like I'm also like not doing any cardio, and I feel like I look leaner. I'm getting leaner as my body weight goes up and stuff. I'm like, man, like I might as well just run this because I have to do a qualifying show and then potentially North Americans. So for that first show, man, I've kind of toyed with the idea of just keeping it in. Like if I'm like dry and hard at 10
And
days out
that was
and
if
it's
I was
in,
looking dry and hard, like, but
yeah,
I could feel that layer of water. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of keeping it in at least most of the time for sure, man.
yeah,
It carries a lot of value from even a fat loss perspective, like you were saying, just
right,
composition and being able to. I think that's probably in large part why I was able to get away with not doing much cardio and stuff as well. But
yeah,
um, you know, there's so many things different about this prep. Honestly, like drugs are higher. I am using some orals, like, and we've talked about how I don't typically do
hell
that.
yeah.
So I'm like deploying a couple. You're like, yeah, man, welcome. So yeah, I've been doing that. Drugs are the highest they've ever been. This diet approach is similar. Test is going to stay in. I've thought about testing here in the next couple of weeks some diuretic use, just very mild after those aggressive feed ups to see if it
Yeah,
looks even freakier,
right.
even higher. Right. So probably gonna try that the next. I probably will be doing that this weekend or the next weekend, which will be either 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out. So yeah, there's so many things I'm doing really differently, but like I have such a good feel for like my response now and
Yeah,
like been prepping myself for so long that it's
yeah.
I know, yeah, there's just I feel fine about doing things differently because it's just I'm pretty in tune with
Well,
stuff
you're
right now.
ahead
I,
too. So it's like you get to toy with these variables. Like you can run a test at 3 weeks out, and it's like, what difference is it going to make? Like,
yeah, dude, you get so much good data playing around with stuff like that, and it's just like, and then when you do it, there's no stress behind it because you're like, this is going to work. It's predictable. I've done it 4 other times,
or you
so
can confidently just cross it off the list and say, you know what, I didn't really like that.
I
And,
didn't get for a lot.
I'm just not going to bother with it. And then you don't have to wonder, like, what if, you know what I mean? Because that's one of those thoughts that may run through your head at the last minute. Oh, well, what if I try this?
Would that have been better?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
But
think I was going to say one more thing about, and I can't remember what it was, but anyway. That the SLU PP that I was running.
yeah, I was going to ask you about it. Yeah. Cause I just
Yeah.
spoke with Tom too, and he's using it as well. He's
Okay.
prepping the other guy that I do the podcast with.
Yes.
He's prepping for a show up in the Northeast. Like, it's usually around like, April 9th or 10th, something like that. So I think he was saying he's about 9 weeks out.
Okay.
And he had mentioned that he's using that as well.
I've enjoyed it. I mean, the needles moved really well. Everything about this prep has worked well. A lot of new variables, like I just mentioned, so it's hard to pinpoint if it's doing its thing. But it
Yeah,
is probably something I will remove because I've not ever ran it into a prep. I don't see the point of it being there once fat loss is achieved, which is going to be very soon. And at
right.
that point, all the fat burners will be tapered back. Like I will leave Clinton at a very, very, very small amount, probably. I'll probably drop it a couple days out because I do have like I'm not a great person with like nerves and stuff. So like if
Okay.
I need as little stimulants in me on show day as possible.
Yeah. What are you?
But
How much of that are you doing again?
Glenn,
No, of the SLU.
that's oh yeah. I bumped it. We last time we talked, I was just doing 300 micrograms a day, but now I'm doing 6. So I doubled it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Still very
definitely.
moderate from like if you read like the studies about it and stuff, like in terms of like the micrograms or milligrams like per pound and all this stuff, like what the human comparison would be, because all the studies are done on like rats. But
Sure.
man, I've heard of people and like some of these studies suggest the use of like 2 grams a day.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty mild.
Yeah, I just figure, first time using it, there's plenty of other fat burners in place. So I was like,
What about Glenn? What do you get up to with that?
typically I'll cap it at like 1 or 120.
Yeah.
Intermittently right now I'm running it a little higher. I'm at 145.
Okay.
But I did implement that beta blocker Nebivolol with
Oh, I've
it.
seen this. Yeah, yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, and I do feel much more calm, and I don't like, dude. If I did
Not
that
jittery.
without, yeah, if I did it with that amount without it, I get pretty worked up, like,
Yeah.
and just pinging real bad. So it's been good that way. And fat loss is still occurring well, so um, that's different. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
doing that, but that's pretty high for me. I won't go. I can't see myself going any higher than that. That just occurred like a couple days ago too. So I'll
And
run
it's like
that
one
for
of those short-term things. Like it's like, yeah,
10
like
days or something.
just a quick push to get you over the hump and get you ready. And then it's like, okay,
Pull it down.
let's get this to like a sustainable level and just land this thing.
Yes.
Um, all right, let's get to some questions here. I got a couple. Um, oh man, with the week that I had, I don't know if I should even dive into talking about some of this science guys and what they're saying.
Oh no.
This guy asks, all the science guys are saying anything outside of the 5 to 8 rep range is pointless. Do you agree?
I don't agree at all. No, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Hell no. I mean, your risk of injury also inside that rep range, if you're going to failure, is astronomically higher than if you train at a higher rep range. So I would be careful on that unless you're training like a pussy.
If
And
I
do
was
it.
21, I might say, hell yeah, brother, this is awesome. 5 to 8's
Let's
great.
do it.
If you want
Yeah.
to do it for another 20 years after that, like probably not.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, dude, it's like every rep in your set is a prerequisite for those ones that are going to push you into mental fortitude. And, that's where the stimulus is provided. That's what's important. I don't give a fuck if it's, 30 reps. If you truly take your reps to that level of intensity, it's going to provide a stimulus to grow from. So, yeah, don't overthink that shit. It's literally just train very hard. I wouldn't suggest, I don't ever recommend, I don't really program anything over like 20 reps, but
Yeah.
anywhere from 6 to 20, train
Yeah.
hard, fail in there, provide a really quality stimulus.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think it's funny that there are people that are like trying to
I hadn't heard that.
definitively say, yeah, oh, there's people that are definitively saying like, posting reels like me laughing at anybody doing more than 8 reps because I know it's absolutely pointless. It's like,
Bro,
okay,
I
you
saw
wrote this, you typed this up with hands that are attached to 15-inch arms. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
it's
um,
crazy, man.
it's like the same man. I don't even want to get into it because I could rant my face off for hours on it, but it's these same people that are saying that a calorie surplus isn't needed to grow bigger. It's like, What the fuck are you, are we trying to create a different reality? Are you trying to
Y'all are
gaslight me
fucking
into?
y'all are fucking bored over here. Like just they're just stirring shit for no reason, man. It's like
That's how what I didn't I've responded to some of these things and I've posted about some of these things, and then at a certain point I have to realize like a lot of it probably is just like rage or engagement baiting, and
I think
I fell
so.
for it. I
I
fell
think
for it.
so, to be honest, man. There's no way they fucking are that into believing that kind of statement.
But it's always coming from people though, like it's like the thing that kills me is that it never comes from somebody like credible. Like it always comes from somebody that like hasn't been big or hasn't helped people that are big. So it's like,
Yeah.
do they believe this? Like, do they think that like just eating in a deficit or even like at maintenance or even just slightly, like, are they on this like main gain train where it's going to take them 20 years to put on 5 pounds of tissue when it's like you could have done this in one off season if you just buckled up and ate the food? Like it's silly to me. I put something on my Instagram yesterday and I just boiled it down to this, like,
I like
because
that stuff.
I got a couple other questions about like, oh well, the science says this, like what do you guys think about this? Like, okay, like we talked off air, like you are 5 foot 10 and a half, you're ripped to shreds around in the 230s or low 230s right now. um I am about 5'11". I'm in the off season. I'm not lean, but I'm between 275 and 280 right now. And I've competed at the top end of heavyweight as well, 224 on stage. Um, Now there's people that are a lot bigger than us for sure, a lot more muscular. But the thing is, none of those people that are above where we are going to tell you anything different in terms of needing to um, not eat in a calorie surplus or only train in this rep range or this rep range. It all works. There's only a few pillars, in my opinion, of bodybuilding that are absolutely required, and they are progressive overload, um, calorie surplus that gradually increases and raises your weight over time, and like quality sleep and being mindful of your gut. Like just main pillars that you have to have. Everything else, there are no musts. You don't have to do trend. You don't have to barbell squat. You don't have to barbell row. Like there's none of these things are must haves. But I think one of the guaranteed pillars is that you have to eat in a calorie surplus. Like I use this example and then I'm just going to leave this, but there has never, ever, ever in the history of humanity been somebody that needed to grow from light heavyweight, which is 198, up to super heavyweight, which is anything above 224, and did so effectively by eating in a calorie deficit or eating at maintenance. They got there because they ate in an aggressive calorie surplus and they used drugs and they trained their ass off. That's it. It's not some
I
big
see.
debatable crazy formula. Like it's all very very simple and straightforward. And you'll hear like these rage baiters, like science guys that are 160 pounds that have never been big say, me laughing at anyone eating in a calorie surplus because I know there's not a shred of evidence that proves that you need one. And it's like, what do you mean, dude? I can look at the most muscular, biggest people that have walked planet Earth over the last 60 plus years, and they all tell you the same thing. Strongmen, power lifters, off-season bodybuilders, sumo wrestlers, NFL linemen that need to put on size, they all eat more. They all eat more than what they were eating previously. And that, by definition, is a calorie surplus. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's how I feel about the science shit. I just think in general, um, we need to just stop giving credence to anybody that is not impressive. Like out in the real world, if none of this shit existed, the phones, the computers, none of it existed. Like if you saw one of these little dorks in the gym and they came up to you and said, "Hey man, you should put your Tupperware away. You don't need that calorie surplus." You would smack them in the face and stuff them in a locker and then go about the rest of your day. You wouldn't listen to them ever. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I love that you know talked about how fucking simple this shit is. Like I drive that point home with every human being that asks me about bodybuilding, and it's like, guys, this stuff is like insanely simple. And I do feel for the younger generation. They are absolutely shit swarmed with information everywhere, but just stop listening to it. Find somebody who looks impressive and ask them that, and they're going to say exactly what we just did. Train like a fucking madman, eat your food, and sleep well. And it's like that is literally it. Use drugs in a progressive manner, in a smart design manner, and like you said, eat foods that are going to foster, improvement, not just bullshit. Take care of your gut. And gosh, guys, like that's it. That is it. But the trick is do that for a minimum of 5 years straight.
Yes.
That's the trick.
That's where the magic is. There's no
That's
magic. Like there's no shortcut. There's no magic. It's not, oh, you know, this guy, this so and so in my gym got really big. I bet he's on GH and insulin. Like I used to have those thoughts when I was 2 years in and I saw someone that was like way bigger than me or crazy looking. I'd be like, fuck, that guy's got to be on GH or so. But it's no, he either has spectacular genetics or he's just put in more time than everybody else in this gym. That's it. And like, again, in terms of like who, like, yes, there's tons of information and it's almost overwhelming for like these younger guys that are on their way up. But like a basic principle applies. Like when I was starting, I can think of the first gym that I joined, and it was just like a mom and pop gym, not many people in it. And there was like 3 or 4 like really impressive, like big, strong dudes that trained there. And this was before social media. This was before I had an iPhone. And like I didn't disregard what they were doing or what they were saying to go listen to the 140-pound dude that was like curling in the squat rack. I wanted to know what they were doing because they in real life had done what I wanted to do. So I would go up and ask them and I'd say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And point blank, all they ever told me, all they ever talked about was eating. All they ever talked about was eating.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember a guy saying one time, one of the guys was like a former convicted felon, like former drug addict. And I can remember him telling me that he was like fucked up on pills one time, but he knew that his food was so important that if he threw up because he was too high, he would remake the meal or eat the fucking throw up. And I was like, oh my God, dude, this is like the gnarliest thing ever. But the guy was jacked out of his brain. He was probably 5'8", 260 with abs. Like, okay, like this is a guy that's done it in real life. Like I'm gonna listen to him.
That's awesome.
So yeah. Okay, let's leave that. Let's leave that. Okay, so this guy says, I'm in the off season, I'm trying to grow, never used insulin before. What kind of insulin should I use and when?
Well, don't until you need to. I'll advise that first. Don't just use insulin to use insulin.
Yeah.
Get a glucometer and a couple times a week, check your fasted blood glucose and then check your postprandial blood glucose after a meal that's not your post-training meal. Don't check your.
How long after? Like an hour after, 90 minutes after?
I like 2 hours.
2 hours. Okay.
Yeah, I would typically advise just to check your postprandial before a meal. So that's typically
okay.
2.5 hours to 3 hours after your last meal.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look at those. If that starts creeping up steadily, and it's getting over 100, even if it's hanging out in the upper 90s, and I'll say this, pair it with the visual feedback too. Though, if you're still lean as shit and you got a fasted blood glucose that's flirting with 100, I'm probably not even going to deploy insulin because maybe your insulin, your fasted insulin is still very low. Your pancreas your fasted blood glucose just runs a little high. I've seen that with plenty of individuals. I got a guy like that right now. He's got an 8-pack still, and he's growing really well week to week. His composition is staying very good, but he's getting 99s and 101 fasteds and stuff. But and he's using. We did deploy a little bit of Atlantis. So like if his composition is shifting negatively, and you're seeing those higher numbers, like use a long acting insulin would be your best bet. Implement that first. You can do some weight calculations on as far as dosage, but like unless you're just fucking massive, like I would start around 10 IUs. See what that does. And if you'd like to see it hanging out in the 80s, even in the upper 70s is great. If you can maintain that, but don't just keep throwing at insulin at it. If it improves and it's in the upper 80s, that's fine. Like you don't need to drive it way down. But yeah, to take that approach, really, I don't advise much short acting insulin ever anymore. I will use it in certain situations with certain individuals, but it's always going to be on top of a Glargine 24-hour type of long acting insulin. So just start there. That's likely all you'll need, but don't use it to use it because you think, like Joe just referenced how he used to think it was magic. So it's not magic. It's not doing it has great synergies with anabolics, but so does your natural insulin. So if you're producing that well, you're fine. But yeah, that's
Yeah, that's a good like textbook write up of it. If anything, if you get to a point, whether it's with insulin or not, if you are waking up in the off season and you're anywhere in the 80s, dude, anything in the 80s, and I'm like celebrating for the rest of the day. That's like
amazing.
I'm in a killer spot. And if you are that person, visuals are still good and your waking sugar is still high. I would also, the only thing that you really left out that I would add, that I could add to it, not that you left it out, but that might just be a hydration issue, honestly. If it doesn't, if all the other signs like don't match that this blood sugar is in the hundreds, it might just be that you're not hydrated or you're stressed in the morning and you tried to take your fasted blood glucose running late on the way to work or something, you know what I mean? So if you can, I know that there's an at-home A1C monitor at this point. I think that can be a valuable tool depending on like what your budget is, but the glucometer is a must. Especially if I have a little bit of a different opinion on the fast insulin, like Humalog. I'll still use it. I still find application in it pretty often for the guys that need it and like are pretty advanced, and I can trust them to do it correctly and like count it correctly and shit. But then your glucometer is a must. Like you need to know where you're at certain points, especially if you're using it. So, like you said, I think the safe route is always awesome. I love Lantus. I've heard people rag on it or say that it's lazy or, inaccurate or any of these things that people will use to try to sell their own coaching. But I think it's awesome. I think there's a ton of synergy. Like if you get somebody that's pretty advanced and they're on gear, they're on GH, and then at a certain point, blood sugars are starting to get high. I like a combination of like Lantus in the morning. I think 10 IUs is an awesome starting point. I think anything more than that's probably overkill to start. And then whatever your current post-workout meal is, I would find a Humalog number that matches that, not the other way around. Don't just say you're going to run 10 IUs post-workout and then bring your post-workout meal up to 150 grams of carbs to match that.
What do you like? What do you like to match per unit? I usually do 20.
I'll do 10.
10. Yeah, that's
start,
like
just to start. If I'm totally just as a starting point to guess, I could see 20 being fine. Like say you're already established as your post-workout meal is 100 grams of carbs, from cream of rice, let's say. Doing 5, like 20 per 20 per IU, I think is awesome with the Lantus. Like if the Lantus is already in, because it does seem to hit harder if you have the Lantus in to start the day. For me, I like 10, and then I will just adjust it as needed. Like if I have them test their BG 2 hours later and they're in the 60s or something, that was probably too much.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. If you train in the evening, your post-workout's your last meal, like you won't want to run it post-workout.
That's
you want to at least have 2 meals after that. So like what I like to do a lot of times is I'll actually, if I do implement it pre, because then you'll cover those pre-carbs really well if they got a big intro that helps out there. And then you kind of get that secondary spike from the, for post-workout as well. So I kind of like that, but if yeah, like if you are going to do it post, just make sure you got another meal after that that does contain carbs as well.
That's a great point. That should be like, I should have said that. That should be like non-negotiable. Like at
Yeah,
minimum, you have that post meal and then another meal after to cover kind of the second wave of it.
yeah, and I would, I like to put that one a little closer too, right? Maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then you're covered and you could like comfortably go to bed. But yeah, I totally agree. Um, what did the fuck? I had another comment based on something that you just said, and now I forget it. So, um, all right, we'll move on.
Something with timing, pre-workout, maybe.
Oh yeah. So for me, I think it's good. Like when we have shows like this, I said this with Tom the other day. Like it's good. I think probably better for the audience when we have like not opposing, but different viewpoints. So in my personal experience, I have come and I've done it all, man. I've done it all. I've done it all for extended periods of time, especially for someone that maybe it's their first time using insulin or they're not using it all the time or whatever the case is, or first time that off season using it or whatever. I don't love pre-workout insulin.
Okay.
Just because I've been in the gym, even with an intra, even with a big pre-workout meal, I've been in the gym where I started to fade and started to, it started to come down on me. And it's just the worst feeling ever. It feels like that workout is ruined to me.
Oh hell yeah, dude! You don't want to. If you go hypo, you want to take a 4 hour nap. It kicks your ass,
Now you
man.
want to eat everything in sight and then you want to take a nap.
Oh brother,
Dude, I've been like really hypo before and like
same
eating
here.
crazy, like
I,
sat and
I,
been like
I put
unsatiable,
400.
dude.
You put in 400 carbs in 5 minutes.
Easily, dude. Easily. I've
Easy
eaten
peasy.
an entire box of cereal. Like
Oh
when I was
yeah,
supposed to eat like a weighed serving, maybe 120
in like
grams or
5
something.
minutes too,
And
dude.
then you
It's
just before you even come up for air, you've eaten an
that's
entire
right.
box of
Yeah,
cereal.
just fucking
Um,
cooking for that bitch.
yeah. um, but that's and it works great. I totally understand the timing, and if it doesn't bother you, if you've never had that experience or you don't consistently have that experience, let it rip. I think your pumps are going to be crazy. You're going to look and feel insane in the gym.
Yeah, maybe go with that, that 1 to 20 ratio in that
Yeah,
case, just
that's a good
so
time
it
for it.
doesn't tempt
Yeah,
you, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a good time for it, especially then. Like you'd want like a pretty big intra shake, pretty hefty with
Yeah.
you know
At least 50, 40 carbs at
50 grams
least.
of carbs, maybe 10 grams of creatine, get your stuff in, make sure you have some salt in there. Um,
Protein intro too, man. I'll do an isolate
will you?
intro. Yeah, I
Okay.
do like
I like that.
I
I've,
use
I've,
use isolates or clear isolates instead of EAAs, man. It's such a better bang for your buck. You're getting protein, literally fucking
yeah,
protein that's going to digest quickly. EAAs, I mean, yeah, it's not more complete than an entire protein, you know.
right. No, those clear like ISOs I almost feel like they are made for a heavy intra shake because they're more
Absolutely.
of like the same like type of fruity flavors or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
because that's tough. Like I have like an intro that I like that's like pineapple flavor, and then it's like, what am I going to use? Like vanilla whey isolate? Like that might be. You're starving right now. To me, that sounds vile.
I'll do that all off season though. Yeah,
Will you?
I'll do blue Gatorade and vanilla isolate, bro. It's like
No
really good.
way. No
Yeah.
way. Oh
Yeah.
man, that my stomach is turning thinking about that. But those clear ones, like I know Nutribio makes an awesome clear isolate that comes matched to a lot of the intra flavors that they have. So
Yes.
it's
Yes, bro.
uh
Rule One does the same thing. I was using their blue raspberry clear for my intro prior to
mm,
pulling it. It was fantastic.
what is that? What is that protein that or that product that people used to use intra as like a protein source alongside the carbs? Not Hydro Whey.
The
It's
fuck,
something. You know what? I'm gonna have to
I
skip it
know.
because I'm not gonna. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm not gonna remember it
I
right
remember
now.
like JP used to talk about it a lot.
Yes, Phil Viz used to have me do it as well, and I
I
can't.
can't
It was
remember.
terrible. My point in saying it was that it tasted terrible. So compared to some of these like clear isolates that actually taste really good,
It's like a Jolly Rancher.
yeah. Um, okay, since we were kind of talking about insulin too, this one is relevant. How I guess he's asking me because I've talked about my personal experience, but whether you use it or use it with clients, how have you used berberine during the off season?
Yeah, I'll use it pretty often, especially if it's somebody who doesn't want to utilize insulin. And oftentimes I'll use them both because they work differently on glucose metabolism. But yeah, I typically starting point is going to be 1,500 a
Yep.
day, and I'll spread that between 3 meals. So like on a training day, I usually do meal one pre-post, and then on a non-training day, I will do meal one like 3-5 or something. Just
Yep.
like three or there if they have heavier carb meals. So do that. I'll run it at maybe 2,000, not much more though. I do find it
Mm.
can affect digestion a little bit.
Yeah.
But berberine is also great for lipid metabolism as well. So it's not a bad staple supplement, to be honest. And for that, you can run it, around that same dose. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I use it. It works. And it's cheap. So that's what
It
I do.
works. It's cheap. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but it does the trick. I think used over the long term consistently when food is high and you're in an off season state, I think you would feel like you got your money's worth from it.
Mm.
Yeah, so same deal. I used some insulin during my rebound and then I cruised. And then since I've been in kind of my off season cycle or blast, whatever you want to call it, I haven't used any insulin. But I've used berberine. I've used it 3 times a day. So for me, I do meal one. I usually train after meal one, so I won't use it in meal two. I don't use it post because I feel like I'm sensitive already from training. And then so I'll like you said, like so 1, 3, and then 5.
Huh.
Um, and then I do 7 meals right now. And so then with meal seven, I also this whole off season I've done 500 makes of metformin. So kind of two different pathways. I'm not, like I said, I'm not using the insulin. Um, Metformin is awesome, life extension benefits, blood sugar benefits. So it's two different products. Then people always hear that I like metformin, and then they'll say, "Oh, but what about the catabolic effects or whatever?" Some of these some
Like
of
now
these
you're on 2 grams of gear.
Bro, I'm on so much shit. You have no idea. Like talked about this on because Tom asked me about this on the other podcast. He asked me that same question. What do you say to people when they ask you about this? And with how much exogenous shit I'm on, I liken it to like using soy sauce or something. It's like, yes, like, okay, they say that soy has a negative effect on testosterone, but
Facts.
I'm using a gram of, I'm using 1,200
I
megs of
microwave
test.
some plastic. I'm not gonna fucking grow a pussy.
Wow. That's the best way to put it. That is the
Yeah,
best way to put it.
but I like the metformin point. Yeah, I run that year round too. Great
Oh, right
add-in for
on.
plethora of reasons. So I see a lot of cholesterol benefits from it even. And
Yes.
yeah, it's a
Yeah. I
great
just
drug.
feel overall, dude, and the testing backs this up. But ever since because I've had it in for probably 3 years straight or whatever. Like once I got on it, it was just a
Yeah,
staple. It just stayed in all
yeah.
year, and I'm so much healthier for it. Like that between that
Bro,
and ARB blood pressure medication, like I use telmisartan, it's worked for
every
me.
person that used steroids used those two drugs. Period.
Yeah, that's
It
it.
does. Yeah,
Um,
extremely beneficial.
all right, maybe one more. Can you elaborate on why you? Oh man, um, this guy says, can you elaborate on why you are so against the idea of using a extensive gut health protocol? All right, so for me, um, I feel like there's a lot of like predatory marketing maneuvers that coaches make in this space. It's a um, very competitive kind of overfilled space. So I get the idea of wanting to have like a niche or an avenue that separates you from people. But I think that there is a lot of predatory practices where a coach gets somebody and then right away, let's get you. Oh, you had a little bit of bloating today. Let's get a GI map done. Let's have you shit in this bag and send it off to a lab
For
and see
$400.
if for absorbent prices, because then they're gonna, then they're gonna get the GI mat back, and then they're gonna recommend a whole slew of products that you must take for the next 8 months. Here, use my code. I'm affiliated with this company, and
And
then
we're talking what, $500-$600 a month product.
easily, easily.
Easy.
Um, and oh, by the way, even though you just hired me to make you a better bodybuilder, we're going to put that on hold for 8 months. You're going to continue to pay me $500 a month for coaching, but I'm going to bring you back to a cruise. I'm going to tell you not to train that hard. I'm not going to push food on you, and we're going to get this thing right first. So basically, they just bought themselves 8 months of a coaching payment and commissions on your supplements without any expectation of returning you any progress in return for your money. I just think that are there people that need something that extensive? Probably. There's cases I can think of. My buddy Tommy Styles, I've never heard or seen someone that has had to push the amount of food that he's had to push over like an 8-year stretch. He got to a point where it it didn't want to accept that food anymore, and he needed to take some time to get his gut right. That I totally get. I see guys that are 2 years into bodybuilding and they go and hire Cameron Cheek, and now all of a sudden they're on a 10-month gut health protocol. Not to point fingers or call out names, but that's just the truth. I've seen it time and again with that guy, a handful of other coaches, Dom Super Slice, some of these other coaches. And I have no doubt that they know their information when it comes to this stuff, but it also seems like it's very beneficial to their pockets to have this many people that need this substantial of a gut health protocol.
Yeah, man, I agree that that trend kind of got hot and heavy, right? And it blew up, and then everybody and their mom was a functional coach. And
Yeah, yeah.
uh, at the end of the day, guys, though, again, like it goes back to what we were talking about. It's like if you do have an issue, like a very simple approach is always going to be the best approach. Like, why do you have issues? Like chill out, sleep better, or make better food choices, and like time will work that out most of the time. So like if you clean shit up, start checking the boxes like you're supposed to, and take care of yourself, give that 3 months and see if your gut improves. Time after time, I've had clients come to me and they have poor digestion, and just from getting on plan, being consistent with it, learning to calm down, learning to prioritize sleep, digestion lines right out. So I think people are just, like you said, either it's predatory or they're just too quick to jump the gun on that stuff. They get the low hanging fruit and go from there. It's just, I think, like overused, right? I think, like you said, there are absolute situations that probably need that, or definitely need something like that. But I think it just got popular is really the thing. And, it's not that deep.
Yeah, that, and it's like, man, like I just don't see like how, if you're 2 years into bodybuilding and you've never been that big, like how is your gut so bad that it requires like all of this? Like, really, you're telling me you can't just like stay on a consistent plan, maybe reduce the total number of ingredients in the food that you eat, like
Yes.
have some apple cider vinegar in the morning before your meal one, like
Drink more water,
maybe
sleep
go
better.
go for a walk before your first meal, like you
Yeah.
said, chill out on get better sleep. Like, really doing all that stuff consistently every day as a priority for 3 months isn't going to improve your gut. You need this $1,400 a month protocol prescribed by this coach. Like, man, I don't think so. And my point, like, I probably seem like pretty ranty, especially on this episode, but I just feel like there is a lot of like, it's not me wanting to call people out. It's me wanting to look out for the 100,000 people that follow so and so that just took in his like predatory bullshit, and then now they're going to go waste their money on this stuff. It's like they're
Mhm.
they're going to go waste their time and money. That's my issue. A big part of it with all the gut health stuff is like I see guys that are happy to do this for 6, 8, 10 months, and it's like, man, you don't know how long you're going to get to do bodybuilding. Like you just wasted a whole year where you look worse. You look worse. Let's be honest. 8 months ago, you look better than you do.
So it was 8 months, but it was also negative however long because you lost that much progress as well. So
Right. And
now
if
you're
and
really
if you end up like way more healthy and you had like real gut issues and then you're way better at the end of it, well then it's worth it. But I just think that's like few and far between. Like I see people that are 2 years into bodybuilding and then now they're doing this, and it's like I don't think that you needed all this, dude. Like if you're 10 years into bodybuilding the way that Tommy was, and you know you're coming from the background of needing to eat 6,000 calories a day for 8 years, like, okay, yeah, I could totally see that. When you're 2 years in and you've never been like, you're 220, like, there's just no way. There's just no way. Um,
maybe.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
I'm
think
with
that's a good place to wrap it up. I more so I'm just looking out for there, like you said, there is so much information, and I think
you. Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are very naive and quick to get taken advantage of in this by someone that looks good on Instagram or doesn't even look good on Instagram, but they have a lot of followers or whatever the case
People are
is. And
great at
it's like,
marketing, right?
yeah, yeah, it's funny. I actually, I think a lot of times that the people that are better at marketing than they are at coaching are the ones that end up being more successful in terms of like client work or getting clients. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
that's very obvious.
yeah, yeah. So just be on the lookout for that, guys. That's more so my point. Like, big takeaways: get your information from people that are credible and people that have done the things that you want to do or helped people do the things that you want to do. They have it real life experience and know what this is supposed to look like. And then in terms of like who you spend your money or what you spend your money on and who you spend it with, like, just be mindful that there are people that don't have your best interests and are happy to take your money every month. So um I think that's a good spot to wrap it. I think we're right here at like 8. So
Fair to say we don't do that as coaches.
well, it just goes without saying, man. Like I try to, a big part of like what I try to share or talk about online is just like, does this person walk the walk? Like, does it make sense to give this person your money to do a job that they've never done before? Like, it's crazy to me. Like, I don't care how many studies you've read, how many textbooks you've read. Like, every time that my car is in need of service, I'm bringing it to the greasy guy that has fixed 8,000 cars over the last 20 years before I bring it to the freshly graduated student that read every textbook. Like, dude, I don't give a shit what you've read. Like, have you done this in real life or not?
Love that analogy.
You know, that one's that's a Tommy Styles analogy. So I got to give him credit for that one.
That's good. Yeah,
You got anything you want to
that's
add or plug before we go?
nope. That's it. We'll link up again next week, and I'll be more depleted and more hungry, and we'll go from there.
All right. For Austin Brown, I'm Joseph Percher. This is the One More Rep podcast. Until next week, guys, we are out.